When you play the Game of Thrones, you
Subscribe and like.
or you die. There is no middle ground.
What if Jaime was never freed by Catelyn in A Clash of Kings? What if instead Catelyn just kept on letting Jaime be a prisoner? What would occur differently than what ends up happening and all of that? So let's talk about it here in this video today. But before we do, if you did want to become a Patreon or a member, you do get videos early and also some exclusive content. I will be doing my condensed reviews and my overall thoughts on the episodes for those members. I will still be doing the normal like live stream stuff covering the episodes, but those will be way more like in depth, not as condensed down, just if you want to see what my random thoughts were. But let's get into the video. So the first thing you have to think about in this scenario is that Jaime was huge. Jaime was the crutch for Robb, that if Robb did all these massive wrong things, as long as he had Jaime, Tywin really would never kind of touch him in terms of like a deceitful play, anything that could possibly get Jaime killed. Remember, Jaime is Tywin's heir, right? If Jaime was to die, Tyrion is all he has left. Think about the last chapter for Tyrion in A Game of Thrones. Tywin seems to just have given up Jaime, and it's why he seems to be manipulating and trying to treat Tyrion better, because he starts to see Tyrion as really all he's got left in terms of an heir, and Tyrion picks up on that. So in terms of what would change, I think the one major component of the story that would change would just be the North and the Riverland plotline. I think a lot of the other plot lines would actually kind of stay a little bit the same, but we would see a difference way later down in the story. Like we're talking like Winds of Winter territory. So let's take a look at it right away. So events of Storm of Swords. The Red Wedding wouldn't happen. Tywin would not try to do the Red Wedding if Jaime is still alive and there is some hope of getting him back. So what would I think would occur? I still think Robb needs the phrase. It would eventually lead to Robb going back up north, just like his plan was in the main story. Nothing changes there. He still needs men. So there's a couple things that are interesting. One, the Karstarks would not betray Robb. Because Jaime is still a prisoner, they do not turn on Robb. So that's one major component. Robb would still keep that force. I still think Robb would try to regain the Frey Alliance, given he would be crossing the Twins once again to go back up north. That plan would remain the same. He needs to reclaim the North, his homeland, and basically get the Greyjoys out of the North. That would stay the same. So I think what would end up happening is basically what we already saw. I think Walder Frey would have wanted Edmure to marry one of the Freys. That ended up being Rosalind, so we'll just have that happening again. I think that all that would play out the same, except the Red Wedding just doesn't happen this time. It's just a normal wedding. I think this allows the Freys to give more men to the Starks, and it allows them to take Moat Cailin. And I do think they would take Moat Cailin. They were already on the back foot. They were really struggling in terms of the condition that they end up being by the time that Theon and Ramsay get there. That I think at this point, if Robb did any type of flanking, did any type of just big assault, they would have broken. Again, the Ironborn had a lot of instability going on with Balon Greyjoy's death happening also around the time of the Red Wedding. It would have caused Victarion to leave. It would have cost them pretty much the North. Deepwood Motte eventually maybe would have been retaken, or at least Asha Greyjoy maybe would have fled back to Deepwood Motte, but with the Starks already marching back on the North, I don't know if she would do that. But even if she did, it wouldn't matter. The Starks would capture the North again in terms of Moat Cailin, rebuilding Winterfell, Deepwood Motte. Now, there would be an interesting little wrinkle. Theon would still be alive in this scenario, given that he is being tormented and made into reek at the Dreadfort. So there's a lot to think about there, because would Roose or Ramsay ever kind of bring him to Robb? And I don't think so. I think it makes no sense for Theon to ever be revealed again. I think he would either A, be killed or just kept as a prisoner and on the very down low. If Roose has his way, he actually probably kills Theon, because Theon is going to have information that you definitely don't want getting out. That Ramsay's the one that put the castle to the torch and not Theon and the Ironborn. So I think Theon is doomed in this scenario. I think Theon either stays a captive or is killed. Asha, on the other hand, is an interesting one. I think if it plays out normally how it does in the story where Asha gets captured by Stannis, I think it's also very likely that Robb would capture her as well, and be just used as a I guess, a broker to stop the invasion of the Gravejoys. Or I think Asha would be kept as a hostage, kind of similar to like Theon, for instance, in terms of just don't invade us again or Asha dies. Euron at this time wouldn't care. There would be no opposition really to him at this time to begin with. And so the North would more or less become a state where it's retaken, it's in a good state. I think Jaime would be moved up north in terms of bringing him maybe to Winterfell or, White Harbor. Any of these castles even further away from the Lannisters' grips, I think would be a logical choice. And I think that Robb would do so. I think Catelyn, eventually she would come north as well if she doesn't just go with Robb to begin with. Another interesting wrinkle, though, if we're looking at the North plotline specifically, if Bran or Rickon ever pop up again, Robb knows that the Boltons betrayed him. So the Boltons are in a really, really, really weird spot. Because Rickon will be spotted. We will, like, the same stuff that ends up kind of transpiring would eventually occur, right? Like, Rickon would be spotted at some point. And so I don't think it would happen right away, but I think at some point the Starks realize that the Boltons have not really been faithful. Another facet that would change in this, Arya. Arya would 100% be linked up with Robb and Catelyn. The Hound would have delivered her. And yeah, maybe the Hound would have stayed with the Starks. I doubt it. I think he would have kept going, but Arya is returned to them. So in another regard, Catelyn has even less reasons to trade Jaime now, right? If that's ever a lingering thought, Arya is returned to her. Also, we would eventually find out, again, like I talked about, that Rickon and Bran were still alive. And again, Osha may even just return to Winterfell upon hearing the Starks trying to retake the castle, based upon the fact that Robb's coming back and the Ironborn are being killed. So in this story, the Starks get quite united. But the one thing that I think is quite interesting is that, yes, I think Stannis still comes to fight at the Wall. But what happens afterwards? Like, yes, Stannis' motivation was to protect against the wildling attack, defend his kingdom, and the real war against the others. But the same problem still occurs. At the beginning of the war in A Clash of Kings, and even going forward, Stannis doesn't like Robb. Robb, as a self-declared king, has taken part of the kingdoms away from Stannis. How would that work? Would Stannis all of a sudden now realize, hey, he has to work with Robb? It could be possible. I think Stannis is smart enough to realize, yeah, the North is not going to come to my side, right? And the main story makes sense, right? He kind of saves them from the wildling threat. The Boltons are very hated, but everybody likes the Starks. And at this time, morale would be quite a lot higher. You're going home, you get the Ironborn, you have a couple of victories, you take your home back. There would have been news from the South that also would have been great at this time, because I think a lot of the stuff that happens at the capital would have been the exact same. So in a lot of ways, I think Stannis has to realize he has to work with them or he's going to die. So there's two options that play out. One option is after the battle with the wildlings, he does not agree with Robb. The same situation as Renly, but he just cannot come to terms with Robb in terms of a truce or anything like that. The two go to battle, and more than likely Stannis dies. Just how it is. In that situation, Davos would die, Mel would probably die. All those characters would all end up dying. So that would happen. Now, I don't think that's going to happen. I think that Robb and Stannis would have a truce. I think they would come to this agreement that, yes, we have to fight this threat of the others. Robb and Jon would also meet back up in terms of Robb, probably being a major middleman between Stannis and Robb. Telling them of this threat, I think the two would unite and put aside their differences at the time. But while all this is going down, we also know that the capital stuff would probably end up going more or less the same. Because, yes, Robb is still alive in all this, and Jaime is still alive, but that doesn't change the fact that the wedding between Joffrey and Margaery still would occur. Now, does the Purple Wedding still happen? Yeah, I think based upon if we're going off of Olenna was responsible, or even Littlefinger, regardless, both ways, I think it makes sense that the Purple Wedding still goes through. Joffrey's dead. Tommen becomes the king. Everything transpires the same. Tyrion is then put in prison. He gets released, kills Tywin. I think all that goes down the same. It might be different. I might be missing something. Let me know what you guys think. I think all of that, for the most part, happens. And this is great news. Tyrion kind of being the big brains of Clash of Kings and thwarting Stannis in a lot of ways. He's going to be headed to Essos to help Dany. You will be seeing Tywin's death, and you're left with a situation where Cersei is kind of in power. And the state of the country is very much still at wartime. When Cersei kind of comes into power in A Feast for Crows, they're kind of at a peacetime, right? The Riverlands are all but defeated. The North are under the Boltons' somewhat control. It kind of feels like a peaceful state, but not really at all. Dorne is kind of having a little bit of an uprising, but they're still under the thumb of Cersei. She kind of believes the Greyjoys are doing the only thing. You're still kind of at peace. You're still at all-out war at this point of the story, in terms of what's going on during this point of the story. And so you have Sansa, who ends up going to the Vale. And this is where you kind of have a weird issue if you're Littlefinger. Like, yes, Sansa's important, but at this time, Robb's still alive. The North is still stable. What do you kind of do with Sansa? How do you manipulate her? Maybe Littlefinger doesn't go through with the Purple Wedding. I just think it still would happen just based upon Olenna wanting Joffrey dead. I still think it would happen, but let me know what you guys think. Maybe in this situation, Sansa actually isn't rescued from the capital. Instead, Littlefinger allows her to die based upon she doesn't hold as much value at this time. Still possible. There's just a lot of like what if kind of stuff going on. I think the Daenerys and Young Griff stuff would all still happen. Now, there would be a wrinkle. Would Young Griff still be convinced enough to go to Westeros instead of with Daenerys? Because the kingdoms aren't really as disunited as they were when he comes in the main story, because Robb and Stannis would have kind of an uneasy truce, I feel like, working together against the threat of the others, Jon being the middleman there. Who knows? But I think Daenerys, her plot would still go the same. Daenerys' plot is pretty much unaffected by what happens in Westeros, so she would still end up coming over at some point. The difference is, does Young Griff go over, before her or goes with her? It doesn't matter too much in terms of Cersei. Cersei's dead. I mean, the Riverlands are going to be way more united against Jaime in terms of the Lannisters send their army against the Riverlords. Not going to go as well. And by this time, Robb and Stannis may be coming south to try and, beat down the Lannisters now while they're weak, hearing the news that Tywin's dead and Tyrion has fled. I think that everything points to the idea that they would die. I think the Lannisters are just screwed in this situation. The next interesting part of it would be when Daenerys comes over. Because you got to remember, Robb doesn't really care about who's sitting the Iron Throne. I don't think Robb would try and mess with Daenerys, especially with dragons and all this stuff, realizing the actual threat. This is where that alliance would be tested. Would Stannis cooperate with Daenerys? It's tough. Because on one hand, it's like, yeah, Robb doesn't want the Iron Throne, so he doesn't care about Stannis taking the Iron Throne. Like, he would, rather see a good ruler on it, but he's not actively trying to take the Iron Throne from Stannis. Whereas Daenerys is, and there will also be bad blood between them because Stannis' brother literally took the throne from her family. I don't know what would occur there. I think that they wouldn't be able to work together, and I think Stannis dies. I think Robb stays out of it. I don't think he would support Stannis in it. And I think we come to a situation where Robb and Daenerys work together. Euron would still be a threat at this time as well, but I think he would just be dealt with. I think he's going to be in the normal story where he eventually will be defeated. So I think Daenerys and Robb end up working together to try and defeat the others. Now, this is where it also gets weird because we don't know the specifics of how the others are going to be dealt with or how they're, maybe there's a meeting that happens. I'm going to just say in this scenario that they win. I want a happy ending in these, and we never have happy endings. So I'm going to say that Robb and Daenerys, with the country mostly united, are able to defeat the threat of the others. And maybe Daenerys kills Young Griff before this happens if he came over earlier, or maybe he came with her, maybe they're married, whatever. I think eventually they would defeat the others or make some sort of pact. I don't want to go too far into this theory because so much of it changes to where it's almost impossible to try and predict every single thing would happen. How would Littlefinger manipulate events going on at this time? It seems very weird to think about. Does he have Robb assassinated? I mean, there's just so many what ifs in terms of Varys and Littlefinger at this point, but I tried my best. Let me know what you guys think about this video. If I missed something or whatnot. But yeah, I'm very interested to see your thoughts, and I'll see you guys all in the next video. Also, hope you guys are enjoying the House of the Dragon coverage and the live streams and all that stuff. And yeah, I really hope you guys enjoy it. I know House of the Dragon is probably going to be really good. And yeah, I'll see you guys all in the next one. Bye, guys.